Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Wolves Report. I'm Ryan Lester, and thank you for joining us for episode 145. On tonight's show, we'll give you our player and match analysis from Wolves' 2-0 defeat to Crystal Palace. We're going to ask the question, how is Jeff Shee still in position? Take some of your questions and look ahead to next weekend's game against Aston Villa. Oh, what timing that is. We've got our two regular pundits joining me tonight in the form of club captain Nocky and Tyler, who I know had a few tasty Guinnesses yesterday afternoon, so hopefully he's feeling a little bit better today. And we have the designated grown-up in the form of BBC WM's Mike Taylor. Thank you for joining us, Mike. Nocky, Tyler, thank you for joining us as well. Mike, I'm going to try and change that graphic because they've got some people's writing all over your face. I think that's very rude to that.
That's all right. Anyway, I know my place on this.
I wasn't expecting that to happen. But Mike, your take on Wolverhampton Wanderers 0, Crystal Palace 2.
I thought it wasn't. In some ways, it wasn't all that far removed from some of the better performances so far this season. In that, I don't think you could criticise the effort that was being put in, which was both creditable and slightly worrying, because Wolves, it did underline that Wolves aren't in the position they are just because they haven't been managed very well to this point, although that's certainly arguable, or just because players haven't been trying hard enough, because I think they have been. They're in this position because they aren't good enough. And once again, my impression was that they battled as hard as they could. They gave everything they could, and they simply, at both ends of the field, were not sufficient. And you couldn't convert any of their chances, because they did create some, weren't good enough to take them, and weren't good enough to keep the other team out again. So it was the same, the change of manager and a refresh with all that, all of which is fine and good luck to Rob Edwards. But the underlying reasons that Wolves are in the position that they're in, on the spiral that they're in, are still there, which is specifically that the squad is not of the required standard for the Premier League.
Tyler, obviously you were there yesterday afternoon. We didn't really learn much, did we? We kind of thought it would be like, try and keep it safe, keep it tight, but it was pretty much of the same again. But for me, I don't think we should underestimate what a good side Crystal Palace are.
Before we go into that, Ryan, how's your head and hangover at the moment? Are you okay?
Yeah, I had a lovely afternoon and a lovely evening, and I missed my last train home. Disaster. And I'm supposed to be the grown-up as well.
I know there's more to tell as well, Ryan.
Mike's here as the grown-up anyway, so I'm fine now, thank you, and I'm just having some squash. But yeah.
I fully agree with everything Mike said. I think when you looked at the lineup, I think you used the phrase, Ryan, Brexit ball, which I know is one that my son uses as a younger sort of teenager, and it just stank of that, didn't it? It's sort of three big punters at the back, it's two big punters up front. Marshall Manetzi, I'm sure we'll come on to later. We could do a podcast on him just on his own, couldn't we, if we're honest? And I think, Mark's right. It sounds bad for a podcast, and you can talk about it till you're blue in the face, but the players are just nowhere near it. They're absolutely nowhere near it. And I thought it was men against boys yesterday. And you see some of the stats that, Wolves had more shots and a higher XG. I mean, I just didn't see it myself. I thought...
Well, Arias is a massive chance, isn't he? He's got to score that. He sort of corkscrewed it facing the wrong way. I don't know how he missed that.
The way the Palace played, the way they popped it and moved it, and the forwards get into little pockets of space and little 1-2s. Wharton ran the show, and I remember me and Nocky saying on this podcast years ago that Wharton's a player that Wolves should sign, but obviously he's young and British, so we're not interested. Guahy's a level above anything defensively that we've got. Richards, Lacroix, Sarr. I mean, all over the pitch, they were just far, far superior to us. And yeah, I had a great day. I fully enjoyed it. A few beers, nice bit of food, bit of hospitality, was well looked after. But I'm going into Wolves games now with absolutely no expectation whatsoever. And, Nocky said to us a few times this season, thinking about having a bet about Wolves not winning a game this season. I don't see a win coming. Certainly this year, certainly this side of Christmas. And, that Derby record is under serious threat, isn't it?
Yeah, it isn't a serious threat, Nocky. I mean, this is pretty gloomy stuff so far, isn't it, Nocky? The manager in the
Come on,
nicest.
Knock, what you got, sir?
The nicest thing we're here tonight. Someone's commented then on Mike Taylor's voice, and to be honest, that's just going to soothe me through the next hour. That's all we need. But Nocky, I suppose we'll have to go to you next, Nocky. We talked off air briefly. I thought Wolves played well in the second half until Palace scored. I know there was only one team really playing the football. Wolves more sort of had a bit of fire in their bellies the second half, and they were snapping to a few tackles, little few triangles, balls out wide. But Palace were the better side. But there was a glimpse for I don't know how early Palace scored. It was reasonably early, but there was a small glimpse. But as Tyler said, it was men v boys.
No, there was no glimpse. I mean, what's your definition of playing well?
15 minutes. That's how low my hopes are.
And we created what? We had one shot on target in the entire game. That was in the first half. There wasn't a glimpse. We didn't play well. The expectations are just that low now that the fact we didn't get absolutely pumped is almost feels like a result for us. They were far superior to us. They were better than us in every position. And, you talk about some of the players. They've not spent mega money on these players, but they've just recruited really well. You look at Mateta. I mean, you look at Pina that they brought in. That was the replacement for Eza. And he tore us to pieces. The finish was outstanding. He was involved in everything good that they did. They lost their main man and they replaced him with Pina, who looks like a quality addition. We lost our main man and we replaced him with John Arias, who looks like he's never played football before. So you've got to look at the recruitment. And yeah, we were in the game at 0-0. But let's not forget they've missed a one-on-one. They've had a couple of real big opportunities to get themselves in front, and they were just a lot better than we were all over the pitch. And I'm normally pretty critical of the players. I'm not really going to be today because I just don't think they're anywhere near good enough to be at that level, and that's not their fault. If you're trying to find some positives out of the game, it was probably Agbadou's best game this season. He wasn't terrible. Other than that, I'm struggling for any kind of
bar, isn't it? He wasn't terrible.
He wasn't terrible, yeah, and he wasn't at fault for much. But you look at the squad collectively across the board. I mean, we bring on Hwang Yi-chan, who was probably Palace's best player in the second half. I mean, he took him 5 minutes to completely ruin the game. And in the first half, Menetzi's probably their best player. We've just got no quality in that side, and we've got Gomez and Andre, and we think they're good players, and we think that because they're Brazilian internationals, they can play a bit, and we know they can. But then you look at that Adam Wharton performance, and he absolutely tore them to pieces. And the problem you've got is we've got those two big lads. If you are going to play Andre and Gomez, who are very similar in what they do, you need a ball-playing midfielder with them. You need someone to carry you up the pitch. You need someone to link the midfield to attack. When that player's Marshall Menetzi, who looked like he had his feet on the wrong way around, you're never going to be able to impact the attacking areas of the pitch. And it's just so wrong. And I don't blame Rob Edwards at all. He's got to have a look at those players. He's got to be able to have a fair assessment of where they are. But me and Tyler were talking about it yesterday. I don't believe there's any variation of that Wolves squad he can play that's going to make us any better than we were yesterday. I just think we're so far away from it. And unfortunately, it's just another really, really soul-destroying afternoon.
Well, I mean, I would argue that Bellegarde is considerably better than Menetzi. And the one player you've got that can actually travel with the ball and push it past somebody didn't start, which I think was a tactical own goal. It's his first game. You know what? I understand trying to pack the side against big physical players against Palace. But I do think when Bellegarde comes into that team, that makes Wolves slightly better. No, it's not going to be a staying up difference, but he's that player in midfield that can travel with the ball. And I think that takes the pressure off. And I do feel, Nocky, a bit sorry for the two centre midfielders because all the quality in front of them has gone. There's nothing there. The ball keeps coming back again and again. So I do feel like those guys are getting ground down. I think they were two of our better players yesterday afternoon. But the quality at the business end of the pitch, Mike, is it's so far off where it needs to be. For me, Mike, just looking at the transfer window, this is arguably Wolves' worst transfer window I can remember since supporting Wolves because they spent over £100 million. They've considerably downgraded in every position. And I mean, bearing in mind, it took Cunha 6 months to acclimatise to English football to become a decent footballer. These guys just look miles off it. There's probably Krejci in the window, but otherwise, it's been such a bad window.
Yes, I mean, I broadly agree with all of that. And the difference between where Wolves are now and where they were, say, 3 or 4 years ago or one of the differences is that yes, they've spent the money because the criticism you can't have of this summer is that they didn't spend the money because they have. They've essentially spent all the Cunha money and all the Ait Nouri money. But the problem with where Wolves are at the moment is for example, when they signed Pedro Neto was raw. But it was okay for him to be raw because there was still Diogo Jota ahead of him. So you could bed him in, and then when it was time for Diogo to go, by then Pedro was ready. And there are several other examples like that where the players will come in and had time to, and from the point of signing Fabio Silva, and then the same plan was kind of there potentially because Raul was still there, and then suddenly he wasn't, and from that point on, it's all started to go south. Whereas now players are being brought in. It is possible that more of the half a dozen players that were bought in the summer will, by the end of this season, look like Premier League players. At the moment, I would agree with you that Krejci is probably the only one who does. Wolfer looks maybe taking a bit of a step forward from the first two games, but some of the others nowhere near there yet. By the end of the season, it is possible that some of them will be, but it'll be too late then. Because there's been nobody ahead of them. So that is an issue. I mean, you mentioned Bellegarde there, by the way. I don't know, but I think it is possible that Bellegarde, one of the reasons he didn't play yesterday was because he'd been away with Haiti and wouldn't have got back until quite late. That may be the reason. So I think we will probably see more of him. Edwards didn't. I mean, the whole squad wasn't together until Friday. There were still players arriving as late as Thursday evening. So I wouldn't, and I did ask this of Rob, and I'm sure we'll talk about it more next week. I wouldn't take yesterday's team selection from Rob Edwards as being some sort of indication as to what team he's got in mind for the rest of the season. I think it was probably pretty experimental. Some of the players he had literally only met in the previous 48 hours. And although he'll have known their sort of parameters from afar, he won't actually have had any time to talk to them, let alone assess how they are after coming halfway around the world or whatever they've played in. Bellegarde played 2 lots of 90 minutes, for example, on another continent.
And he's off to the World Cup, yeah.
Yeah, and he's off to the World Cup. So there's a lot of things at play. I think yesterday's team ought to be considered not what Rob Edwards is going to do from this point, but just a sort of what he felt he had to do for that game with the pieces still in flux. Maybe in 2 or 3 weeks' time, we'll know what his version of the squad and whether he thinks, or we start to see what he thinks is the best 11 that's out of this squad. In 2 or 3 weeks' time, perhaps that'll be clear. It still might not be the answer, but I think it probably. I wouldn't draw too many conclusions on Edwards' ball or Edwards' version of the best team of this squad based on what we saw yesterday.
Yeah, that's really, Mike. That's exactly why we're on the show. We needed a designated grown-up, and here we are.
Yes.
Thank you.
By the way, that's not to gainsay anything you said, because I don't think they look remotely good enough, and I can't really think of a single game this season. They've played 12 Premier League games, lost 10 of them, and drawn 2, and it's hard to think of a single one where they've looked confident of winning it for more than a few minutes at a time. Even in the 2 games that they, as it were, nearly won. They just haven't been good enough, and not, in many cases, not close to being good enough.
Yeah, I think that the Spurs one was the one that hurt because Spurs weren't getting anywhere near the goal, and they just scored a worldie in injury time, and it was an absolute killer that was. But yeah,
but even then, it felt like an FA Cup third round tie.
And that's funny you should say that, because we was talking at the game on Saturday, Tyler, and we exactly said that. He said this looks like a plucky League One team, and no disrespect, it looked like a plucky League One team playing against the FA Cup and Charity Shield winners.
Yeah, that's the sort of where we're at, and I think we've probably covered the point in the first 15 minutes, but I think we're all in agreement that there's miles between the two teams, and we look like that team that was sort of happy to sit back, keep it tight. Thought we defended okay first half, actually. I thought Agbadu, Krejci.
Won some physical battles, didn't we? We looked like we dominated for a change.
I enjoyed Andre and Gomez's first half performance. They were busy, they were nippy, they were ratting around, they were winning the ball back. Problem is when they do win the ball back, absolutely nothing to give it to. Moller Wolf was a bit of an outlet on the left side. Jackson, arguably one of the worst players I've ever seen, put a Wolf shirt on. The only one that isn't as bad as him or is worse than him is Marshall Monetzi, and he's in the same team. And we joked in me at half time, Ryan, and I think I said it to Nocky after the game. You could sort of pick a Wolves' worst ever player from the team we've got at the moment. It's unfortunate they're that bad, and you look at the money we've spent on them as well, and I'm sure we'll come on to that later. But big money spent, £140 million in the summer if you include Strand Larson going permanent, and Marshall Monetzi £16 million. Jackson 10-11, Moller Wolf 10-11. And like Mike says, they may well come good. They may well turn out to be good players, but just haven't got that time and that luxury, have we? And yeah, I fully agree with what you and Mike have said. It looked like a League One team just trying to stay in the game against a Premier League team. And as soon as the first goal went in,
there was no, but that was game over then. You're getting into the early part of the second half. We said actually there's a couple of little 1-2s and triangles. That's a bit better. But as you mentioned as well, Tyler, being that little bit more expansive is probably what cost us. But Nocky, moving on to that opening goal, I think there's a bit of misfortune. He's took a deflection down, he stumped it in, but that's just a pretty sign of much where Wolves are at the moment, isn't it?
It's one of them, isn't it? It could go anywhere. It drops right to him and bang, it's in the net. I think the frustrating thing is, though, we've allowed Wharton to strike on the edge of the area when no one's closing down. We haven't shut the space down, and the ball's ended up ricocheting. So we haven't dealt with the initial ball into the box particularly well. But look, when the look goes, it goes, doesn't it? I mean, Krejci has one in the first half where it bounces back off a Gomez free kick and it ends up just whacking him on the thigh and going over the bar. They have a different.
For them, it falls for them and he taps it in.
Yeah, drops right to him 7 yards out and bang, it's in the back of the net, isn't it? But it had been coming, I think, at that point. They had a good spell where they were putting us under some pressure. And I completely agree. And I had the same conversation with my dad and my son who I was with at the game, that we felt like a team who were just trying to stay in it. I think we set up to not lose the game. We set up to try and be big, strong, and tried to be a little bit more physical than we have been. And we probably did that. But it looked like a team who was just hanging in for dear life.
When you've got a 6'4" striker, a 6'6" striker, a 6'1" attacking midfielder, all right, and that's your forward line, there's only one way you're going to play because there isn't going to be much football. And to a degree, yeah, I don't mind that to a degree, but that's just for me a sign of how far Wolves have fallen. They have to literally take it back to basics just to get it in the mixer, and it's just really sad.
But that's a marker of the window, though, isn't it? Because we signed Tolu, who, and I don't dislike Tolu, but he's very similar to Strand Larson. There's absolutely no plan B in that attacking area. The only thing you can do is put Hwang in there, which we know doesn't work. So the whole recruitment was completely wrong. We needed someone a little bit different, someone who could get the ball down, a little bit of pace, get in behind, make those runs off the attacker. Instead, we've bought a lad to go up front, and now we've got two big, tall players who can't run in behind and can't affect the game. So it's just another sign of how poor the recruitment was over the summer.
Yeah, going on to the second goal, Tyler. I mean, talk about impacting the game, but I know Hwang has had a lot of criticism, but equally when he has scored and played well, he has been praised as well. But this is the player now for me that's not played well since he had that purple patch of that Christmas 2 years ago. We turned down the £20 million. Like, the closer the guy gets that goal, he just doesn't have, for me, in possession. He just can't be trusted. And again, yesterday, it's a ridiculous pass to play. Bang. I mean, it's a great finish, but again, you just don't need to give the ball away in that position.
No, it's not ideal, is it? That was arguably the worst cameo substitute appearance I've ever seen. I think he failed to get into the box when Strand Larson whipped a lovely ball in, and there was no one there in the middle, and that's where.
Where was he then, by the way? Where was he?
Exactly. That's probably where you want.
As a striker, as a Premier League striker, you're busting the gut to get to the penalty spot on the far post. You're giving your man an option.
He's
20 yards behind when Strand Larson plays that ball, and he's your attacker. He should be sitting in and around him. It was ridiculous.
Then there was an instance, I think, where he just literally ran the ball out of play with no one around him, just kicked out of play. And then obviously he gets the assist for Palace's goal. And the lads scored. It's a lovely finish, isn't it? But there is absolutely no need or no necessitation from Hwang to play that ball. He could have dribbled it wide 5 yards and played at the line. He could have done anything apart from what he's done. And it's not the first time he's done that. But, we've been talking about these players for weeks, months, close to years with Hwang, and they keep getting selected and they keep getting picked in the team. And it's a sad state of affairs if there's nobody better than him to come on at the moment, really.
Yeah, just moving on to the team itself. We'll go briefly through this because there's loads of other stuff to talk about as well. But Mike, Sam Johnson, I don't really think he had particularly much amount to do. He wasn't exactly getting peppered. It wasn't a game where the shots were flying. I think everything he had to do, he was just okay from him.
Yeah, blameless. I think it's fine. I think it's, the only really notable thing is that he starts under the new manager in possession, as it were. But I suspect, Rob Edwards probably starts there with an open mind. Johnston was in goal previously. Wolves aren't where they are this season, particularly because of Sam Johnston. So yeah, there's no case to answer for him as far as yesterday's concerned.
Yeah, I don't mind. I think it's at the other end of the pitch. We've got massive problems in terms of finding the ball, because I think the right pairing in midfield and the right three centre backs, it isn't that bad. I just think there's just no outlet at the top. Nocky, moving on to the three centre backs. You mentioned it was Agbadou's probably best game of the season. Krejci looks comfortable in there, but I am still concerned about Totti.
Yeah, I mean, when I say they were okay, it's a very, very low bar. As I said earlier, they weren't terrible. There were still moments in the game where they were very easily split. I mean, you look at the through ball. I think it was Wharton who played
Very there, wasn't he? Yeah.
Very simple pass straight for the middle of our back line, and he's in on goal. And he's not the quickest player, and the fact he managed to get into that space is a little bit of a marker of where we are. I think what we found with our centre halves is they can be relatively solid for 80 minutes and then just drop an absolute clanger. They've all got one in them. So they were okay. Totti. I don't think we need to go into too much detail around him. Krejci's the pick of the three, and Agbadou was a little bit better. So they weren't terrible. Couldn't do a great deal about either of the goals, but they still don't fill me with confidence.
No, I just feel like, well, not only Wolves, but Totti Gomez misses Ryan Aït-Nouri more than anyone else, because you could get him out of trouble, and you could give Ryan Aït-Nouri the ball on the goal line and he'd be comfortable taking it and going. I think it's really exposing Totti's limitations. I think he's an incredible athlete, Tyler. In the second, I think there's that run in the second half when he thundered down and put a really good challenge in. That's his game. But we're asking him to play football. I think we'll real struggle. Moving on to the wing backs, Tyler, into David Moller-Wolf and Jackson Chachwa.
I think if I gave Jackson a 0, that's probably as kind as I can be about his performance. He just doesn't look anywhere near this level. He's not switched on. He doesn't sense danger. He doesn't get forward well enough. He doesn't overlap. He can't put a good ball in. And I think he's still the better option out of him and Keanu Hoover. So that probably tells you where we are in that position. I never thought in 2025 I'd be crying out for Matt Doherty to get fit and get back in the team, but that's where we are. Moller-Wolf, I quite like him. I'm not quite sure why, but I think he's quite a clever, engaged footballer. I think he's sensible. I don't think he does a lot wrong. I think he's probably
steady Eddie, isn't he?
Yeah, I think he's fairly limited in what he can do, but he should have had another assist yesterday if Arias could sort his feet out. And I think he got a couple of assists earlier in the season. I quite like him. I think there's something about him that shows potential. But between him and Hugo Bueno, it's a toss of a coin, isn't it? Really, but. Yeah, like you said, I don't think you can sort of really fault the back five and the goalkeeper for either of the goals, really. And I think in open play, we defended the box fairly well, better than we have done recently. It's a goal from a phase of a corner and a worldie that we've given them, isn't it? So I don't think you can put too much, on the back five ultimately.
Yeah, it's an interesting one with Matt Doherty. Arguably, Wolves, one of the most best value for money for signings ever. Has he got the legs to play wing back now? I'm not sure, but he's certainly the one that you would trust the most out of those. He's certainly probably the least athletic, but he's probably the most trustworthy. So, and if you've got Agbadou behind him, maybe that'll work. But let's see. Mike, moving on to the trio midfield of João Gomez, Andre, and Marshall Monetti.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't think Gomez and Andre, as Nocky was saying earlier, I don't think it was their best games. Wharton was in charge of midfield throughout of that game. So, yeah, I think that there are other occasions in which they shine better. It concerns me that you can, with João Gomez in particular, that he's now looks so keyed up during games. And quite understandably, he's throwing everything into it. You can see how these things are happening, but it troubles me that there is a red card coming not too far away for him, and I don't really know what can be done about that, because that's a combination of a fiercely competitive player, deeply frustrated by the situation he finds himself in, which goes for a lot of people at the moment. So, I mean, a yellow carded again, yesterday. But what can you do? You've got to keep playing him there because he's the best option there is. Menezes, I think he's one of the most puzzling players that Wolves have had in recent years.
It's such a diplomatic way to say it, Mike.
Well, I'll tell you why I say that. Because I think there is more to say about him than merely writing him off, and I understand why people do. Because clearly, when the ball comes to him, he is not of the right standard. Let me put it that way. That's a diplomatic way of putting it. However, he's magnified because he so often gets to positions where nobody else is going to get to. So there are even more occasions than there might otherwise be where he arrives in a place and you think he will now do something great, and he doesn't. And it happens over and over again. There was one particular incident we would describe during the commentary in the second half. I think it was it might have been the first half, actually, taking the North Bank end. And chased the ball down the left-hand side that no other player on the team would have even considered getting to. And having got there, then comprehensively failed to put a good ball into the middle. Yeah. And that, at the same time, you both want to say, well, that's great for showing the
endeavour,
the idea that I could chase that down, and that's the spirit. And, we say, well, everybody you'd want, if you were wearing a Wolves shirt and you're out in the field, you want to run like that. And he does that. But then you hope there's going to be something better. And there seem to be more and more of those occasions. He never shirks. He doesn't hide. He keeps offering for the ball and it keeps not working out for him. And then every 10 or 12 games, he'll smash one in from miles out like he did in the last game of last season. I can't fault him for effort. He clearly hasn't met the standards. But I mean, I remember asking Pereira about him last season, and essentially, why are you playing him and in the position you're playing him? And he said, "Look, I'll tell you why I'm playing Menezes. Essentially, and I'm paraphrasing, but only slightly for Vitor. He's running interference for Larson, in that." And he put it in a slightly more elegant way than this. I can't remember the exact words, but essentially, he said Menezes arrives and he's causing so much chaos that space opens up for Larson. So when we were trying to work out last season, I said, why is it that Larson is scoring goals all of a sudden in that Spurs at the end? He said the reason he's scoring goals is essentially because Menezes is there and defenders are watching him and they're not watching Larson. Now, I think you need to have more about you than that, ultimately, if you're going to make it in the Premier League. So it's with a heavy heart about Marshall Menezes that he isn't meeting the standard. He isn't, but he's not of the standard for different reasons than other players are, in that there is a guy who is absolutely giving everything he's got.
There's no question about that.
And over and over and over and over again, more so than any other player in the team, he gets magnified that he isn't good enough. And I think that's really sad, but it is also inevitable.
I think as well, just finishing up on the midfield, Mike, I think we've seen the more limited footballers in the team, like Toti Gomez, like Marshall Menezes, and I think it's been magnified by the lack of technical players around them, like when Ait-Nouri used to get Toti out of trouble. Like if Menezes was there and he had Acuna or Sarabia, he could do that bit of work to get you in the pitch. These players now are expected to play more football, and they can't do it because they've not got the technical players around them. So I think the summer recruitment has actually exposed the less technical players as well. Yeah. So.
And by the way, there's a footnote to this, and maybe we'll never find out. I think there is a world in which, in the Championship, Marshall Menezes causes absolute mayhem in games. I think if you drop Menezes into a Championship, and let's hope we're not talking about this, but that is where we are at the moment. What it's looking at. Marshall Menezes, I could imagine being a player who caused absolute carnage in the Championship, because he'd be crashing into defenders and stuff would be happening. Defenders would be unsettled by it, and things would happen. Now. And that, if that's meant to be, sounds worse damning with faint praise, then so be it. He isn't. When he gets into positions in the Premier League, there isn't the time and the ability for him to do stuff. I hope he has a good future. I think it would be great if he came good for Wolves, because I think if he ever did discover that touch, fans might get behind him, because he is a bloke who is very obviously giving everything he has got at all times, but he isn't working out at the moment, and that's genuinely sad.
Yeah, it is sad. There's no question about his tenacity, his desire, his professionalism. He's a fantastic professional. He's just not a very good footballer. That we probably need a little bit more technical ability in that area.
Yeah, by the standards of where the Premier League is now, Ryan. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Last but not least, did we say knocking Tyler next? Tyler, the forward two. Tyler, as you're 6'6", we'll go with the 6'4" Strand Larson and 6'6" Tolo. Easy for me to say.
Yeah, me and Tyler have got quite a bit in common. We're both 6'6", and we've both never won a Premier League header. I don't see for a man of that size and physique how you can make yourself almost so small. Maybe I'm being harsh. I don't know. But what Mike's just said about Marshall Manetzi, if either of those two ran as much as he did and put themselves around as much as he did, I think we'd probably have a slightly better front two. I'm not saying it would change anything yesterday, but like you said, Ron, you're looking at two big strapping centre forwards, and every week we say the same, don't we? The centre halves won't have an easier game. Tolu, for me, miles off it, fitness-wise. He scored a lovely couple of goals in the Cup, hasn't he? And he's impacted games for sort of 10, 15 minutes, but miles off it yesterday for me. And Strand Larson, just what we've seen all season, really. I think his strengths, in a way, are almost dropping a bit deeper and travelling with the ball, like the goal he scored in the week for Norway. But when you're just lumping it up from the centre halves, he's not going to be effective, is he? And, like Mark said, look at when Nketiah came on for them. He was bright, he was bubbly.
I mean, I don't rate Nketiah, but he looks a million miles ahead of anything we've got.
I've never been, but some of his touches were delightful. Some of his hold-up plays, link-up play was brilliant. And it refers to the point you say, Ryan. He's got players around him that are capable. I don't think these two do. But we keep talking about, the players aren't capable. But if you drop Marshall Manetzi and Strand Larson, you're talking about changing the whole front three, aren't you, ultimately? Because none of them are up to speed. And I think in a perfect world, none of them at the moment would be playing for Wolves. You'd have to change the whole front line.
Yeah, I mean, I look at that 11, just before we go on to the next section, I look at that 11 and genuinely, I'm not sure it's around the top six in the Championship. I don't see, you'd look at a Premier League team and think, that should be smashing it. I don't see a team there, all right, that I think I see a team that's struggling to make the playoffs, genuinely. That's how bad it's been this season.
And asset-wise, I mean, Mike didn't want to talk about it. Let's be honest, we're going down. We will be in the Championship. Asset-wise, I see 3-4 players there, maybe, that other Premier League clubs would be interested in.
Krejci, so Gomez, Andre, Strand Larson, gone. Yeah.
So then you're either stuck with the argument where you can't shift players on. Tolu's not going to want to play in the Championship. He may or may not be good enough to. But that's a £24 million centre forward you've signed. So you're not going to sell him for £24 million to anybody. Asset-wise, and again, we talked about it last season, there's not a lot there, is there really, that Premier League clubs are going to want to have a look at.
Yeah, absolutely. This is episode 125 of the Wolves Report with BBC WM's Mike Taylor, Mark Knott, Chris Tyler and myself, Ryan Lester. The next section of this, we've talked about him a lot recently, and I think we need to keep talking about it, is how is Jeff Shi still in position? So I talk about it a lot, I moan a lot, so I thought I'd pop a little survey on Twitter, and I did. From 1,726 votes, 87% of Wolves fans said it was time for a change. 11% had no strong opinion, and just 2% of fans think Jeff Shi should remain. Mike, those are quite damning numbers if you're the chairman looking at that.
Yeah, he's a deeply unpopular figure, and there's no getting away from that. I wish he was able to communicate more clearly exactly what the sort of plan is. Now, I mean, there are a few things to say. I am led to believe that he has made some connections going out and talking to supporters club groups, for example.
That's right.
And that's a good thing. And that should happen more often. So that's a good thing. But the communication with the supporters generally has been confused at best over the last 2 or 3 years. So none of these things have helped. Look, this is all ultimately a product of the team going down the Premier League, and it doesn't matter who is in that position or who the owners are. If the team is going down the league, you're going to be unpopular. What the real unknown quantity about Jeff Shee is, we don't know how much autonomy he's got from Fosun. Is he the man on the ground, able to call all the shots, or are the big decisions made at Fosun? We would all like to know the answer to that question. We're all keen to ask those questions. I hear people saying, why aren't you asking the questions? Of course, we'd like to ask the questions. I wish there were people to ask them too. And we'll keep trying to do that. But yeah, that is the question we can't answer. Let's suppose Jeff Shee was replaced by Fosun tomorrow and replaced by somebody else, anybody else. Who would be making the decisions still? The really big structural long-term vision decisions, would they be being made by that person, or would they be being made back by the Fosun ownership? I gather the main man at Fosun, Guang Chang, was there yesterday. So what exactly is how much autonomy Jeff Shee or any subsequent person who comes into that position is given? Unless we somehow manage to find out that, it's really hard to make any other judgment. I think it probably would be a good PR move, if nothing else, for Fosun if they made a change. But I don't know whether that would make an effective change, if you know what I mean, whether it would just be a different person there putting in the decision to somebody else.
I think he would acknowledge that the fans' anger and concern that I of the opinion that he has quite a lot of power at Wolves and everything goes through him. Yes, he'll have guidance from his bosses. We all have guidance from our bosses, but I believe a lot of the things are his sign off and his decision. And I genuinely think the reason he won't come and speak forward, because he's not going to be able to answer the tough questions that you and Daz and everyone else would ask, and that's why he's not coming forward. That's my opinion. I might be wrong. Hopefully, I'm proven wrong. But
yeah, I have interviewed Jeff Shee on I think 2 previous occasions, both before the pandemic. So it's been quite a while now.
When we were good.
And sorry,
yeah, when we were good, he would have. Of course, he would have come and speak when we were good. Yeah,
it was at those times. So it was so long ago. Tim Spires was in the room with me one time, but that's how long ago it was. So that doesn't really shed any light on it. I think it would be a good idea. I hope it will happen. Some hope it will happen, but it's not going to change where the club are. The other thing I would say, and I'm certainly not here to advocate for or against Jeff Shee. Everybody else can do that. But some of the decisions, or some of the general, what's the word I'm looking for? The general approach itself about being self-sustaining, which has been, a very loaded word in the last few months. That bit itself is not inherently in and of itself a bad idea. Why it's worked out badly is because Wolves have been so very bad at implementing it, for the reasons that we've just been talking about for the last 35 minutes, really, in that the other clubs who are following more or less that strategy are doing it better. And we've seen examples already this season of the teams who have done it better, and Crystal Palace are one of them. They are doing it better than Wolves are doing it. So it is not good enough to just say, we are going to be self-sustaining and we're not going to spend any more money than we bring in. You have to do more than just say we're going to do that. You've got to have a really properly constructed plan and a really well-drilled team, organised with the data, whatever it is. All these other things that Brighton, Bournemouth and these other clubs are managing to do, they are managing to do it, and Wolves haven't done it. So the strategy itself, the headline label of it, is not in and of itself bad, but the implementation of it has been, as we can all see, terrible.
Yeah, Nocky, as the clubs that Mike mentions then, we talk about Brighton, Brentford, Bournemouth, Crystal Palace. They lose a manager, they lose a player. There's a cycle. Wolves, for me, it's Scattergun, Rob Edwards, Vita Pereira, Gary O'Neill, Lopetegui, Bruno Lage, Nuno. And then on the technical side, there's Matt Jackson, Dominic Otetti, Matt Hobbs, Scott Sellers, Kevin Thelwell. That's not a succession plan. That's a scattergun approach. And for me, he's just no surprise why the chairman is so unpopular, because people can see there just doesn't seem to be a plan. It's like it's one thing, then it's another thing, and then we're after Gary O'Neill again. For me, it just absolutely reeks of chaos.
Yeah, I think Mike's kind of touched on it, hasn't he? If do they trust him, or does he not make those decisions? I mean, the other option is have they took their eye off the ball in terms of Wolves, and they're not really keeping an eye on what's going on because they don't really care about what's going on at the club at the moment. And you mentioned around it to give the fans a little bit of knowledge. If we were to have Jeff Shee come out and be interviewed, I don't think Fosun care less what the fans think. If that was the case, we wouldn't see the increase in prices. We wouldn't see us benchmarking against teams who are pushing for top six when our transfer strategies for those probably looking for top six in the Championship. We've got no clear vision of what we're doing. There's no obvious plan. We've said it before. I don't think that Jeff has ever managed to successfully manage expectations at the club. He's had a very scattergun approach in terms of where he thinks we should be and where we can be, and then all of a sudden we're nowhere near that, but there's no explanation. It's radio silence. So he's clearly failing at the club, but I would be absolutely amazed if Fosun have any real appetite to replace him, because I don't think they're all that interested in Wolves' plight at the moment.
Yeah, Tyler, he doesn't look particularly good. I mean, if Chairman Gowie's there, whether he's on a business trip or not, I mean, I do think he's interested, but I just... they're not really showing that. You can be there in attendance, but at the moment, it's just, as we talked about, I've said this many times, I said it on Mike and Dazzy's show, that the incremental decline has been off the chart the last few years. And I just don't see, if his job was just to keep Wolves in the Premier League, he's succeeded. That's not going to happen for much longer. So I don't understand how, I mean, he might be, I don't understand, Tyler, how his position is not under threat.
I know what you're saying, and I know you're very passionate and you're very strong in your opinions of Jeff Shee, but a lot of the bad decisions that have been made, I don't think are Jeff Shee's. You know, Fosun or Jeff Shee have signed off £140 million of transfers. Fosun or Jeff Shee brought Pereira in, and at the time he was the saviour. Fosun and Shee have brought Nuno into the club. They brought Lopetegui into the club. For one reason or another, it just hasn't worked out. And I personally don't think that's all on Jeff Shee. I think the owners of Fosun, for me, they're the ones that are responsible. I wouldn't single-handed it to one person. It's not like when it was Sir Jack Haywood and it was one owner and you could sort of vent all your anger. Same with Steve Morgan. We had opinions around him, and Jez Moxley took a lot of the slack for Steve Morgan. At the end of the day, Fosun own that football club. Like Nocky said a million times before, they're a proper company. They should have a strategy and a
Which
goal.
is why this is staggering. This is absolutely staggering.
But
The word being operated so badly.
Put it on the chat, and I agree with it. And it might be a bit, what's the word? A bit cryptic in a way, but I fully agree with Craig Spillard's article today that Fosun's interests are around growing the Chinese market of esports. I think the Wolves badge, the Wolves logo, gives them a brand of which they can do that. They were open and honest around that, around the pandemic when they went across to China. I personally don't think Fosun give a toss, for want of a better phrase, around Wolverhampton Wanderers Football Club. I think they care about the brand, the logo, and where that can take from an esports perspective. And I genuinely think that's why, as Wolves fans, we should be very worried about what's coming.
Yeah, that's a great point. And for anyone that's not seen Craig Spillard's thread, you can find him on Twitter at Craig Spillard. I think that's his at. It's absolutely fantastic. It's a really good thread. But if you're a Wolves fan, it's a really concerning one because they have got the brand now. I think esports is growing massively. They've got the iconic badge. I think it was being beamed into the arena when there was like 60,000 people there or something like that. So it is a concern. And what is also a concern, Mike, is
knock his laptop.
Oh no! All the spin-offs of like Sudo and esports. I'd love to know if Wolves are getting any of that money back, and is any of that coming back into the club? Because if they're using that branding, you kind of like to think that would be more than the self-sufficient model, then, and that's what they could do.
Yeah, I mean, there is, and I've seen the sort of some of Craig's tweets as you were referring to just now, and I mean, we don't know that it may be that some of that money is to feed back into the club, and that would actually be a good use of it if that's the case. That the idea of using that Wolves brand and spreading it to these new other fields that's also not a terrible idea.
No, I'm completely fine with that, but I don't know if we're receiving any money at all.
That's difficult to say at the moment, and it would be a bit of clarity around that would be helpful. The one thing I would say is about the brand and them taking that, and that brand is, that logic is absolutely fine so long as Wolverhampton Wanderers are still in the Premier League. I'm not sure that it necessarily remains fine after that. I don't know whether I don't know. Perhaps I should know more about esports and how big it is. Perhaps we all should. Maybe as you say, Todd, we are all going to get to know about it one way or the other soon. But the whole point of being in the Premier League, if you're taking the brand, is that you're in the Premier League, because it is, orders of magnitude bigger than everything else, and certainly bigger than the Championship. So, half of the Far East is not going to get up and watch Wolves games if they're in the Championship. If that was vaguely the idea when it started, and then that brand carries across, then it ends once you drop out of the Championship. Look, I can walk around, the West, and you can walk around here and you can see people with, I don't know, Chicago Cubs baseball hats on, or New York Yankees baseball hats, or American football things, because that brand is there all the time, and you can hang all sorts of other baubles off it. Most of the people wearing that stuff have never been to a baseball or American football
but
game.
It's a powerful brand.
But it's a powerful brand.
It's relentless.
And it's a perpetual brand, because you can't get relegated from any of those things.
Mm-hmm.
That's the difference.
Now, in the Premier League, you can be. Now, what difference it makes to the Wolves esports brand in whichever parts of the world, or the online world, that brand appears to be a big thing at the moment. If Wolverhampton Wanderers Football Club drop out of the Premier League, does it materially affect that? Logically, it sounds like it would, which would be another reason to feed the money back in. But I think Tyler's point, another point that you just made, is also relevant. The problem, at least this year, is not that Fosun have taken all the money away, because they haven't taken all the money away. The money that was generated has been reinvested. Now, whether it's come from the esports or whether it's come from selling Mateus Cunha, but it's the problem. Wolves are not where they are because they haven't been spent. And I see you put there, but it hasn't been spending. And I see you've just put there the graphic of back us or sell us. Well, they would be. I wouldn't necessarily want to come out and say it, but they would be sort of within their rights. No, I don't mean if I were Jeffrey or somebody else. I'm not sure I would want to put it in front of these terms, but they could come out and say, "Well, do you know we did back the manager this summer to the tune of 9 figures."
Well, hang on a second. You say that, but it's backing under the self-sufficient model. So
but that
model should work.
The model's not the problem. I don't. Because it follows that if the spending was done that badly this summer, suppose they'd have put another £100 million in. How do we know that Wolves would have spent £200 million any better than they spent £100 million? Because £100 million is still, even in the Premier League in 2025, is still an absolute truckload of money. And you ought to be able to get good value for that. Now, buying football transfers is not, he's not an exact science and never has been. But if Fosun have said, here's another £100 million, go on, Vitor, bust that. How do we know that they've spent it any better? Because the evidence of we've just been talking about the last 45 minutes. The evidence of the last of what we've seen so far, the last 12 games, they didn't spend £100 million very well. So, in a sense, the money is not the issue. The decisions that have been made, and I think the point about scattergun chopping and changing between different managers and different styles of manager and sporting directors and all that, that's where your problem is. The piping is wrong. The actual money going into it is not quite so wrong.
Really good stuff. This is episode 145 of the Wolves Report with BBC WM's Mike Taylor, Mark Knott, Chris Tyler, and myself, Ryan Lester. Knocky, it never rains, it pours, and it seems like Wolverhampton Wanderers are relentlessly kicking us in the teeth at the moment. The latest kick in the teeth, funny enough, we're just talking about esports, and it's nothing against these four gamers here. I'm glad you're representing. Enjoy yourself, guys. However, there is a small sponsor of branding on there, Knocky. Does anyone know what words it says underneath the college?
Yeah, I can't say. I can't swear on a podcast, mate. This time, so.
Well, I'll have to say. Unfortunately, it says West Bromwich. Now, come on, guys. I know it's representing a university or a college, but to have the audacity to put your biggest rival's name on one of your kits, I just think, Nocky, has there been any thought going to that whatsoever?
Probably not. But at the same time, I remember, I think it was in the 90s, we used to have West Bromwich Bank and Building Society sponsors around Molyneux on the A board. So I don't think
It's
it's
a little
something
bit different to wearing it on the kit.
It is. But again, this is part of the esports brand, isn't it? They're trying to bring money into that brand sponsorship, or however they're doing it does that. I don't like it, but I don't associate esports with Wolves. I know that it's something that's big and it's something that's growing. It's something we should be terrified of in terms of the future of the club. But for me, I don't associate it with my football club. It's something completely different to me. So I don't like seeing it on the shirt, but we've got bigger problems than that, in my opinion.
Yeah, spot on. Tyler, I just think for me, this is just another kick in the teeth. I just think it's thought that, I'm telling you now, if that esports is that big, they can get sponsors from all over the world and everywhere.
Yeah.
I just think it's so unnecessary. It's so ill thought, if there's any thought gone into it whatsoever.
It does seem a bit off, doesn't it? And I'm with you. I don't necessarily think there's any reason for it. I'm sure there's enough colleges, schools, universities around Wolverhampton that could benefit from that. So, yeah, I suppose when things are going bad, you notice these things. If this would have happened under the Nuno era, where you're in Europe 2 seasons in a run, you're in the FA Cups, you wouldn't even notice it. It wouldn't be a thing. But everything's just magnified now, isn't it, because of where the club is and where the club seem to be going. But yeah, I'm with Nocky. I don't like it. I'm not necessarily too fussed about it, but there'll be a generation of Wolves fans that would find that deeply offensive.
Let's just spin it round briefly, Tyler. If this was the other way around, yeah, and the West Brom kit had Wolverhampton Wanderers on it, we'd be laughing our heads off. We would.
I remember. I think it was Tottenham that they had a sponsor, and it was red on the front of the shirt, and they basically petitioned to the club to change it to a different colour. That's how they felt about it, because it was the red of Arsenal. We're literally putting the name of our rivals on the shirt. There's no need for it. Let's be honest, it's not necessary.
Yeah, poor stuff from me. But this is Wolverhampton Wanderers at the moment. This is episode 145 of the Wolves Report. We are 52 minutes in so far. Let's get some questions before we talk about Wolves' trip to Aston Villa next weekend. Sorry about those words, Mike. I've just slightly got them off your head now. I do apologise for that. Here we go. Nocky, here's the one stinker for you. Jonty says, would you rather a team of Hwangs or a team of Manetzis? That one's for you, Nocky.
I'd rather have a team of Gary Breens, to be honest, than either of them.
I think someone responded to that, actually, was the old Gary Breen song.
If you could get Manetz's work rate and into the rest of the team, then you've got a little bit of a chance, haven't you? It's a tongue-in-cheek question.
Of course, yeah.
If you spin that round as which one would you keep out of the two, it'd probably be Manetzi.
All day long. All day long. There's no question about that. John C., thank you for a bit of housery on this latest episode. Next up is Luke. He says, would you rather Fosun accept relegation in January if the gap's too big from safety, or throw the checkbook at it? Mike, I think this is a really, really dangerous situation. I know we talked about it briefly. I think I mentioned it briefly on Tuesday's show.
Yeah.
I know some fans won't like this. I'm of the opinion that, the gap for me now is too big. If that gap's 15 points in January and they try and throw 150 million at it, I'm not sure, one, I trust them to get it right, or two, we could be talking an absolute disaster. That 90 million debt we've already got, saddled on with another 150, 240 million pound debt taking to the Championship. We are not in a position to be taking that risk.
Yeah, I think, and that is a decision that's going to have to be made. And look, it's possible that the head guy of Fosun was there yesterday. That might have well have been a question he was asking himself yesterday. At what point do we effectively call this off? Now, the problem with doing that is if you say, okay, basically you say, by January the 1st, okay, folks, we're done. We know we're cooked. We're going down. Now, we might be able to make that call for ourselves already, but as soon as you do, if suppose Wolves then are relegated with 8 points or something like that, that's going to be a huge millstone to go down with. I don't say that flippantly, by the way, but you've got Christmas decorations up in the background, Nocky, and Wolves haven't won a game yet. So
we joked about that. We said it was going to happen, didn't we?
That's it. So it's possible. I don't think it will, but it's possible. And if that happens, then there are lots of other consequences, including but not limited to, however much Wolves want Rob Edwards to be the new manager at the start of next season in the Championship, and I think he should be, and you probably all think he should be, but if Wolves keep losing between now and March, there will become a pressure from outside. It will come as it has with every other manager, and they'll change him, because that's what happens every time. Even if at the moment they are absolutely 0% have the intention of doing that, they would have said, no matter how bad it gets, Robbie's our man for August the 1st next summer. But I'm telling you, it won't be that case, and we all know that, if in the event that happens. So it's very dangerous to write a season off. Also, by the way, you want people to actually turn up and watch this team. If you as the club say, well, that's it, hands up, we're finished by January the 1st, it might be acknowledging reality, but you've still got to get the doors open for the next 5 months. So I think
they have to do. I think even if it's a couple of loan players, if it's gone, a couple of fringe Chelsea or Arsenal players with a bit of pace, so we can try and have a bit of fun and try and enjoy a football game. I think that's the minimum expectation.
That argument of not do anything except limit losses is absolutely fine if it's something that's not emotional. But football is emotional, and so it's not fine, or at least. Don't go nuts and spend 150 million if you think it's done. But I think you have to do something. I don't think you can just say, well, we just wash our hands of it completely.
But how much does it take to save Wolves, though, realistically? I mean, with this squad of players, you said there, don't throw 150 million at it. I think we'd need 150 million just to be anywhere near competitive based on the players.
I agree. I think
who comes in the situation we're in at the moment? It's almost like I don't see any amount of money keeping us up. So for me, I'd just keep the powder dry now.
I mean, the other thing to say is, this isn't a direct correlation. It's not like saying if you spend 50 million quid, you'll buy 10 points. It's possible that you spend 20 million quid and buy 6 players who improve you and you score loads of points, or the other way happens, which is what happened in the summer.
Absolutely. Luke, thank you for being part of the latest Wolves report. Great question. Next one's for you, Tyler. It's a great question from Jeremy. Jeremy says, we can't defend for 90 minutes in the Premier League. The opposition inevitably score and there's no plan B. Also, it's so dull. Might as well throw caution to the wind at this stage.
Yeah, why not? Would you rather watch Hwang and Manetzi or Mane play for a couple of games?
Well, I thought Mane was unlucky. I thought at Chelsea, he actually did more than most of the first team players, and he looked like he could take people on. He looked like he had that young fearlessness about him. I'm disappointed we've not seen more of him. I understand that Rob's obviously gone with Land of the Giants first game. I get what he's thinking, but I would rather see Mane developing
Give me Mane and Enzo Gonzalez off a striker any day of the week. I think I'm with you guys. We're relegated. I don't think anything's going to change. Mike makes a very valid point that you still want to keep your supporters going and watching your football matches. So you need some entertainment. You need just something to buy into. A local lad would give you something to buy into.
And he's going to get so much when he gets the ball, the raw.
You just need to. Fair Lopez. Yeah, who knows if he's ever going to be good enough, but you'd sort of buy into him a little bit because he's a 21-year-old kid and he's trying to do the right thing. He tries to make something happen. He tries the risky pass. He tries that. We've seen enough of Hwang. We've seen enough of Manetzi. We've seen enough of that style of football. Play Enzo, play Mane, play I forgot his name, Fair Lopez, and just go from there. Just try and enjoy it again. Because I'm not enjoying it at the moment. I don't know about you boys, but I'm not.
It's and like I'm fortunate that I've got you guys coming on. We talk about it, and then the dark humour gets us through. I just speak to Daz and to Mike, and it's the social side now, isn't it? You're almost in a habit watching Wolves. But if I wasn't taking my mom to the games and having a laugh with my mates, and it was just Wolves. I wouldn't just go for Wolves
Well,
at the moment because
to be fair, Rob, we could see Nocky from our seats yesterday, and he didn't look like he was having much fun during that game.
Literally, the players come out of the tunnel and he had his arms folded. I thought, how's he in a mood already?
Hadn't even kicked off.
Jeremy, thank you for being part of this
Anticipation.
latest Wolves report. Let's get one more question, and then before we talk about our trip to Aston Villa next week.
I'm not talking about that, by the way.
Oh, you're going to be going, aren't you?
Mike can take that segment.
Oh no. Here we go. Here's an interesting one. What will Fosun's legacy be? No, it's a great question. Now, I hate saying it now because I'm so angry, but you have to tell the truth. And please jump in here. I had the best couple of years of my life under Fosun, watching Wolverhampton Wanderers, FA Cup semi-final, European Cup quarter-final, the likes of Jota, Neves, Jimenez, Willy Bolly, João Martino, Rui Patricio, Johnny Otto. Amazing times. But if Wolves go down, they'll be in a worse financial situation. The ground's in a worse situation when they took over. Yep. So by getting relegated, we're actually in a worse position than when we first started with Fosun. Any of you jump in with that one?
Yeah, so it's too early to answer the question. The other reason it's too early to answer the question, and I understand why it's being asked, is because there is at the moment no evidence that, the question implies that Fosun's time in charge is coming to an end. And at the moment, as of right now, there is no evidence that is the case. Now, I heard a very compelling podcast on The Athletic talking about Wolves recently, where it was suggested that, in the market, people think that Wolves are for sale because, they're asking for minority interest and all the rest of it. Look, they're closer to it. They probably know the financial markets better than I do. I can't see why anybody would want to buy a minority interest in Wolves. I think when it's sold, it'll be sold. Look, why would you want to buy a minority interest in it? So
I couldn't imagine going. There's 50 million quid. Jeff Shee's in charge. My God, not my money.
But equally, I mean, Fosun's only way of getting the amount of money they've put into it back, which after all is what investment companies do. I can't speak for the esports and the other things on the side, but the only way you can make the football club worthwhile is by keeping it in the Premier League or getting it back to the Premier League. So it is possible that there is a third act of Fosun, which is getting the club back up to the Premier League. That is, it's not a zero possibility that that'll be the case. And if that happened, we'd be answering this question very differently. So, the best Wolves times of the last 40 years have been under Fosun, and now we're in this very dark period. So it'll be a very mixed legacy if it ended tonight.
Absolutely. Any more on top of that, Nocky, Tyler?
No, I think Mike's articulated it perfectly. I mean, we had some fantastic days with Fosun. We had some great days out with them as well. But their part of their legacy could be to oversee the worst ever team in the history of the Premier League. So it's not an achievement they'd want, but it's one they may well get.
You top that, Tyler?
No, I fully agree. I think, are they the best owners Wolves have ever had, or did we just have the best times under their ownership, if that makes sense?
Yeah, that's really good, yeah.
I think we had 2 good years, but we also had a good time before that, and we'll have a good time, like Mike said, in the future after them. That's football, isn't it? For me, it's cycles, it's different ownership patterns. I don't think they've been the best owners. I just think we've had the best times under them.
It's relative, isn't it? It's relative to where you are. I mean, we were the best owner you would think would be Jack because he brought us back from the brink, didn't he, of potentially the club disappearing. So that's the best owner we've had, but he's not the most successful owner we've had. So I completely agree. I think that they've given us some incredible days, and I'll be forever grateful of watching Wolves play in Europe, which I never thought I'd see in my lifetime. And the semi-final, okay, we blew it, but that wasn't Fosun's fault. But now it's just a very, very dark time, and it's depressing, isn't it? It's hard going to Wolves now. I mean, I love my football club, and I'll follow them wherever we end up.
Easy yesterday, stood in that VIP area, to be honest.
Well, you were living the dream there, weren't you? But it's just difficult. And my lad's got his season to give the second time, like second season now.
What has he done to deserve that? Who was you, Nocky?
Well, it's character building, isn't it? But he's seen worse. I mean, I spent most of my time in the lower leagues, but he's having it worse than me because at least we did win a few games. Whereas now we don't look like we've got we've got a draw in us at the moment. I mean, I was excited about going to the Palace game because I thought we might score.
You
I thought we'd lose the game. But I expect us to maybe get on the score sheet, and that's all I've got at the minute.
Just looking for a goal. Tastic, thank you. It's a great question. It's caused a little debate. We are an hour and 5 minutes in. Boys are on overtime as usual because I can't keep my timings proper. Wolverhampton Wanderers go to Villa Park next Sunday afternoon. Mike Taylor.
Ooh.
Yeah, and they're really good, by the way.
Oh, thanks, Mike.
So, I mean, they will be playing a European game on Thursday. They're not always quite so good after that, but you know they're a good side. They're a well-run club. They've found some form since the early point of the season. The variables about it are that it's a derby game, and derby games do go like that. And Villa do still give other teams a chance in games. They didn't start very well against Leeds today before they turned it round, but they have. I mean, I'm not sharing any secrets here. They have a great deal more firepower than Wolves at the moment, even if Ollie Watkins hasn't been scoring goals so far this season. They're a dangerous team, finding some form, and it is a particularly difficult fixture. But the derby element is the wild card, and that's really the main reason to have any thoughts that Wolves could get something there, I'm afraid.
Tyler, Nocky, have you got any hope whatsoever of getting anything next week at Villa Park?
Mike raises a good point, and Mike's right. Villa are a good side. You don't need to be a good side to beat Wolves. Burnley, Leeds, they've all proved that. You don't need to be a good team to beat Wolves, and that's at Molineux. So I watched Villa today. If I'm honest, I thought they were very average. They didn't create a lot against a poor Leeds side. They won the game, but they'll still have far.
Unfortunately, their average is way better than our very good at the moment.
Miles. They've got game change. You know, they made substitutions at half time. Marlon can come on. Barkley can come on. You know, they can impact the game. And like me and Nocky have talked about, I think you could put 14 Wolves players out on Sunday and we'd still get beat. Genuinely, we're miles off it. So yeah, convincing home win for me.
Nocky, there's obviously going to be a few tweaks to get to the team. For me, the absolute no-brainer is Bellegarde coming in because, I mean, having a team of giants is all well and good, but you need one player that can actually carry the ball 10, 15 yards and do something. And for me, Bellegarde in a sort of a 5-3-2 is the only player that can do that.
Yeah, but I wouldn't be surprised to see Marshall play. I think he'll be worried about Villa's midfield, especially Rodgers, who's a very, very good player who's picked up for not a lot of money, by the way. I think he might just go with the three again in midfield and try to be a little bit horrible in that area. But I'm with Tyler. They're so far ahead of us. I don't give us any kind of a sniff. The only hope I've got of not getting hammered is that they've got 2 games after we've played. So they played today, they play again on Thursday. So you would hope that maybe they get a couple of goals and then declare after that. But realistically, it's as many as I want, I think, because we're on our knees at the moment, aren't we? We're going there lacking confidence. As soon as something goes wrong for us, we tend to fold, and I just don't see us being able to cope with them, especially with the pace they've got in wide areas. They've got some good players in midfield. They've got threats up front, and they've got a lot of movement. And defensively, they look a lot better now than they did at the start of the season. I just think they're better than us absolutely everywhere on the pitch. So, no, I don't give us hope now.
The one really interesting about next week, it might be the first indication of what Rob Edwards thinks the best Wolves team that's currently available is. Because the Doherty's not available, Rodrigo Gomez won't be fit, but other than that, he'll have had a full week to actually, get to know everybody's name for a start and really get a proper look at them. So the team sheet next Sunday, I think, will be, whatever it say on it, I think is more interesting than the team sheet yesterday in terms of what happens next.
I mean, if we did roll the dice, Wolves could get tanked next week. They could get tanked. But equally, if we don't roll the dice, we'll sit back and lose 2 or 3 now and get tanked. So I think the centre backs 5-3-2 is the way forward with the wing backs. I just want a bit more mobility in.
We can't take them on though, can we? We can't take them on. We've got to sit deep and try and make it difficult for them to score. Because if we start pushing onto them, we'll leave so much space in behind, and the gaps between our midfield to defence, they'll rip us apart on that. So Wolves can't go for it, essentially. We've got to stay in the game, hope we're in the game with 15, 20 to go, and then maybe you can push a bit. But if Wolves go and try and win that game, then we're going to get ripped to pieces. It'll be over by half time.
My only little bit of hope I've got is that Jean-Luc Bellegarde had the best game I'd ever seen him play.
No, boy,
against Aston Villa. So,
that was his last good game, son.
As if he's Maradona, son.
Listen,
that was the last time he played well, and that's what we put in our hopes.
He only plays well against Villa. That's all he's got, boys. So anyway, this is episode 145 of the Wolves Report. Thank you to all my pundits, apart from Mike, for absolutely hammering me. It is prediction time. Mike, we'll start with a designated grown-up. Aston Villa v Wolverhampton Wanderers.
Oh,
First scorer and score prediction, please.
Look, I can't deny reality. I think I have, Villa 3-1 Watkins.
You think we'll score? It's a start.
Yeah, I do.
Tyler?
I do actually. I do think Villa are not. They're not perfect defensively. So I think it's possible that you get a goal there. But yeah, I think. I mean, yeah, I can't add to anything that's been said. Villa are presently a better team than Wolves, and everybody knows it.
Considerably. Tyler, first scorer and score prediction, please.
Rodgers 3-0.
Really looking forward to next Sunday. Nocky?
Pinch me 3-0. I was going to go for that. There's going to be one game this season we get absolutely destroyed. I really hope it's not this one. I'll go with you, Beanie, with them having a game in midweek. They could take the foot off the gas a little bit. I'll go for a 2-0 Villa win. It'll be someone terrible as well. We'll get Matt Cash from a corner or something like that.
I'm going to go with Aston Villa 0, Wolves 0. I don't believe it for an absolute second, but you know what? A 0-0 is the most positivity I'm going to give you on the show tonight, apart from unless John Rickner turns up and turns a 10 out of 10. This has been episode 145 of the Wolves Report. Thanks so much to BBC WM's Mike Taylor. Thank you to Nocky. Thank you to Tyler of the Wolves.